Healthcare doesn't happen in your doctor's office. You go to the doctor's office, you get care, and then you leave, and then nobody ever sees you again. And so
Mhm.
we've really tried to address the question of like, how could we allow providers to maintain a connection with their patients, even when they're not in their office, at scale, without creating additional burden on the provider? I think I know people, a lot of people I know people who have used ChatGPT to get advice, to get counsel, and has probably helped them through situations. The problem is we just don't know what it will do under certain circumstances. It hasn't been trained or had the guardrails put around it for safety that I think are required. It's not a qualified therapist. It shouldn't probably be doing therapy. It should hand that off to people. And clearly, it hasn't always done that. Healthcare providers across all of healthcare, including behavioral health, are burning out, leaving the field. They're not well paid and they work way too hard. We can reduce that burden on them and help them have more impact with the time they do spend at work. Then that's a good use of technology. So we need to build those data sets, and then we'll be able to say, can AI deliver the necessary intervention here to produce the outcome we want? We just don't.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Digital Health Transformers podcast. This podcast explores the ever evolving world of healthcare innovation, one conversation at a time. I'm your host, Marty, and today's discussion takes us to the future of behavioral health, something we don't talk a lot about on this podcast. And so, artificial AI and human connection are all coming together and also at odds with each other to redefine how we're taking care of behavioral health. So we're going to explore that today with our amazing guest, Loren Larsen, the CEO and co-founder of Videra Health, and he's also the former CTO of HireVue, which is crazy. And it also gives some foreshadowing for what Videra Health is all about. So Videra Health, I think, honestly, Loren probably can describe it better than me and more faithfully. So Loren, what does Videra Health do?
Great question. Really, the problem, maybe just start with the problem that we try to solve. And the challenge that we recognize in healthcare is that healthcare doesn't happen in your doctor's office. You go to the doctor's office, you get care, and then you leave, and then nobody ever sees you again. And so
Mhm.
we've really tried to address the question of like, how could we allow providers to maintain a connection with their patients, even when they're not in their office, at scale, without creating additional burden on the provider, with technology and AI. And so that's Videra has created a platform that maintains that connection between the provider and the patient. We check in on patients on a regular basis, measure how they're doing, and then get back critical information to providers so that patients get the right care at the right times.
Awesome. Could you give us like an example of how someone would use this? Like a patient, what's their problem or disease, and then how are they benefiting from Videra Health?
Yeah, great question. I think there's a lot of examples I can give. I think one that I really like, it's a kind of an emotional story, honestly. Um, you know, the most dangerous time in a patient's life is right after they've left some kind of inpatient psychiatric care, in terms of taking their own life. So we had a patient who had been hospitalized for severe depression. They got put on medication. They were sent home. This is a 17-year-old kid. Um, a couple weeks later, he goes to his primary care doctor, and the doctor looks at what he's taking. He's like, "Oh, you shouldn't be on that. You should stop taking that," which is the antidepressants. A few weeks later, all of a sudden, he's severely depressed again, but worse, right? Because now he's thinking, I failed. I don't want my parents to know. I went to the hospital. I'm ashamed that I can't even like get better. So he's planning to take his own life. And the night that he's planning to do that, he gets a text from us through his provider saying, "Hey, this is such and such hospital. We just want to see how you're doing. Do you have a minute to check in?" Clicks the link on his phone. It opens up in his browser, and he's now interacting with AI that says, "Hey, tell us what's going on. How are you doing?" And he doesn't know how he's doing. It's just asking. And he starts to share how he's been feeling and what his struggles are. And it's interactive. It's asking him questions. And we're also listening to his language, his nonverbals, to understand how he's actually doing. And we trigger an alert that we call emotional distress to say, hey, there's something here that the provider needs to look at. An alert goes to the provider. They immediately look at it and are like, oh, yeah, we have a situation. And so then they're able to reach out to this young man, say, hey, why don't you come back? And he's like, and it actually took a little bit of convincing. He was like, actually, I'm done. I'm out. But they were able to get him back in, get him back to care, get him stabilized. And he shared with them the next day, like, hey, I wouldn't be here today if you hadn't reached out yesterday. Right. And that's what people are going through in this country. We have people taking their own lives all the time. Everybody's been affected by this. But there's never been a way for a provider like that who does care to actually, in a practical way, reach out and check in on this person who they know is at risk, and be able to get them back to the care. And for this young man, he's sitting out there, he's feeling alone. He doesn't realize in the moment that there is help available. There are people out there who, if they knew how he was feeling, they would help. And we were able to connect the provider and this young man and save his life. So that's one example. There are a lot, but that's one that kind of helped us realize how important the work we're doing is.
Whoa, Loren, that's crazy. That is a touching story. That's a touching story. So, okay, what do you have to say about that big OpenAI, I don't know if you call it scandal that came out about the kid killing himself because of his chats with OpenAI or with ChatGPT. What do you have to say about that? Because you're doing the opposite. This is crazy.
Yeah, and I think, look, I think I know people, a lot of people I know people who have used ChatGPT to get advice, to get counsel, and has probably helped them through situations. The problem is we just don't know what it will do under certain circumstances. It hasn't been trained or had the guardrails put around it for safety that I think are required. It's not a qualified therapist. It shouldn't probably be doing therapy. It should hand that off to people. And clearly, it hasn't always done that. There are lots of examples of people who have engaged with AI, and it's designed to ratify what you're saying, right? It's very sycophantic. And I think we probably all experienced that. Like, oh, great idea. You should do that. And there's this case of the person who was planning to attack the Queen of England at Windsor, and he was having this dialogue with it of like, I don't know if I can do this, and it's like, no, you can. I believe in you. You
No,
should.
did this actually happen?
Yeah, I'll send you the reference.
No way. I
Yeah,
don't
and so
believe that. No way. I feel like ChatGPT would be like I don't know if that's a good idea. It really
but
did that?
she's
That's
saying, I, no,
hilarious.
I think this is I think the queen is this and that, and it's like, yeah, yeah, you're right, and because
Yeah, yeah,
it
it would
very
do
much
that. Yeah.
will do that, right, and so it starts to build this inertia for his thinking patterns, which it continues to reinforce, and then dangerous things happen, right, and so I don't think these tools should be used for interventions today. There may be something out there that's been trained really well and had the guardrails put around it, but certainly off the shelf LLMs are not the thing for that. Our goal is to help providers build a better relationship with their patients, see what they can't see, sort of give them superpowers to see all their patients all the time, and figure out who really needs their help the most next.
Okay, yeah. So the key distinction there is ChatGPT was like consoling the kid, whereas you guys like picked up like, okay, he's not okay, and then you sent him to real people.
Yeah, and I think that's still the right way to handle these situations.
Okay,
Will
so
we
that's
get to the
the
point where that isn't the case? I'm sure we will. I have no doubt that we will. And if there's nobody available, then hey, like let's take the next best alternative. But
mm,
today, our mission has been how do we help people do better at helping people, and reduce the burden that our providers have on them, which we all know that healthcare providers across all of healthcare, including behavioral health, are burning out, leaving the field. They're not well paid and they work way too hard. We can reduce that burden on them and help them have more impact with the time they do spend at work, then that's a good use of technology.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, still crazy stories. So looking ahead, every single year, like it's crazy because I look at like I would look at something I did with like ChatGPT last year, like some article or something I cooked up, whatever, and the language is completely different. It's a lot worse, and I'm like,
It's,
wow.
you think it's worse now?
Oh no no no, like back then
Oh, before. Okay, okay.
because it's got so much better now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Especially, and
yeah.
now I'm using like Claude and stuff too, which is also better. And it just keeps getting better. Everyone knows it's like, you know, it's getting better and better. We're building out these data centers, Moore's law, et cetera, et cetera. So as AI continues to improve, how is that going to be reflected in your company? Like, what are you guys going to do when AI gets better and better and better? What's the crazy um, like sci-fi version of Videra Health where AI is really really powerful and you guys are using it for what you do?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think there's sort of a few components of that. I think there's the language part of it, which we tend to not focus on. We obviously are using LLMs to have a conversation with a patient and generate, based on all of this data, what's the right next thing to ask. But we're really trying to look at not just what a person says, but how they're saying it and looking at the whole person. So it's not, I can say, yeah, I'm feeling great today. Things are fine. It's really wonderful. Super happy. But if you just transcribe those
It doesn't sound
words,
super happy.
right? If you transcribe those words into a doctor's note or something,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, we're super happy today. And you're like, maybe not, right? So we're really
It's
trying to
fine.
look for the whole person, the whole
Yeah.
communication. We know nonverbal communication is an important part of it. So we're really focused on that aspect, whereas a lot of the growth that we see in kind of the off-the-shelf LLMs that we all use every day has been on the language side, which has been incredible, right? And I'm even blown away by how much code you can write, right? Like just, I'm a software engineer by background, a computer scientist, but I still build programs, but I don't write code very much anymore because LLM can just do it for me, right? And these are just things I'm doing for fun. I leave it to the professionals at Videra, but just the ability for it to just write a working program from a very simple set of interactions with language is amazing,
Yeah, man.
right? So,
Oh, it's
so I
awesome.
think the sci-fi version for us is, and what we're sort of, we often use the metaphor of like the Star Trek tricorder that they take out to a planet and do all these readings. But like, what's the tricorder for human health, right? And we envision a world where there's one app, your doctor sends you a thing, and says, "Hey Marty, how's it going?" You check in, and it's just a normal thing. They check in every 3 months, and you answer some questions, and we're reading all of this from it, and we're saying, ooh, seems like your cognition's a little slower. Have you had a traumatic brain injury? Oh, I did get this concussion, but I didn't think it was a thing. You know what? Maybe you should come in. Let's get some imaging on that, right? So we envision this idea where there's an app on your phone, you check in, and there's 30 different biomarkers that tell your doctor and you, hey, here's something you need to look at, which just doesn't exist today, right? We have to go get blood labs. We have to go in, and they're like, I don't know, you seem fine. I don't. And the great thing about AI is like if you're doing these check-ins regularly, we're building this visual data set of what you were like at each stage of your life, right? I mean, you probably had stories where somebody went to the doctor like, I just don't feel right, doctor, and they're like, I don't, you seem fine to me. I don't really know you. I don't remember what you were like last year. I have 1,000 patients. How would I know? And you're like, no, something's off. They're like, you seem fine. And you're like, no, you don't understand me. And we could avoid that, right? Where it's like literally like, no, there's actually a demonstrable difference between what you were like last year and this year. And then you could tell the doctor, like, yeah, actually, they've got a facial tick that wasn't there last year. And he'd be like, oh, yeah, I didn't even notice that. Okay, great. Now let's go down that path for diagnosis, right? To help guide the clinician to make the right treatment path and observations for you.
Whoa, yeah. That is something. Okay, so there's like a preventative aspect in here too.
Yeah, I mean, I think preventative or early detection, right?
Okay.
There's so many diseases today that are like, it took me 5 years to get diagnosed. It took me 7 years to get diagnosed. It took me 10 years before I decided to go see someone about that. But if you did a thing and it said, hey, you should see someone about that, you might not procrastinate for 10 years. And then it'd be easier to correct that situation before it becomes something chronic, something severe, something life-threatening.
Yeah. That's I mean that's great. And that's low cost too. It's just like I mean, well the cost is only getting smaller is what I'm saying in the long run.
I mean, if you want to announce my new price discounting strategy, sure, no.
But
In the cost to deliver these things, yes, it is going down over time.
yeah.
Or we can do more and more at the same cost, right? So instead of
Yeah.
measuring one disease state, now we can measure 5, 10, 15, 20 um, at a similar cost.
Yeah. Yeah, and so okay, what about like so if you're training all these models on visual data and like what that indicates about the person, I feel like couldn't this go beyond just spotting diseases like lie detection or this or that, like you know what I mean? I don't know. Has anyone asked you about that?
Yeah, it's really funny. I don't know if you've read the new Dan Brown book. It's called The Secret of Secrets. It's really funny. There's a place in there where this guy gets sort of kidnapped, and they've got this camera looking at him, and it's looking for nonverbal behavior. And it turns out it's a secret government agency called In-Q-Tel. At HireVue, we ended up sort of we had to make a choice back then. We had played a lot with lie detection and talked to government agencies about that. Like, could you take this HireVue technology for job interviewing and use it for lie detection or healthcare? And we had to make a choice, like, which path do we go? We chose healthcare. But
Oh.
lie detection's really, really interesting and hard. Um,
Hmm.
Even MRI traditionally has not been very good at, you put someone in an MRI machine, it's still not accurate at predicting deception.
They use MRI machines for lie detection?
In studies they've done it, right? Like, oh, if we looked at
Really?
their brain, could we tell if they're lying? Because just from cameras, just from nonverbals, it's very, very hard um, uh, to do it. Even looking just at the eyes, it's hard. It's not
Yeah.
100%. It's nowhere near 100%. And even humans who are really well trained, the studies say, even like law enforcement, like, I can spot a liar. The data says they're barely better than random.
What? Barely better than what about like a professional poker player?
I don't know if I've seen the studies on that. I don't know. I don't have to. I don't know the science. I mean, certainly some people are better than others, right, at reading tells.
That's like a movie idea. Professional poker player turns into a FBI agent because he can like tell when something's off, or like turns into a doctor because he can tell when something's off.
Yeah.
But I think I read somewhere like doctors used to live with like the families that they like took care of, or they like were neighbors and they like know the people well and know their diets and that's kind of changed. And you're bringing that back with um with AI, which is just a thought that came to mind.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it was so much easier in the old days, I guess, where somebody lived in a small town, and I have a friend who's from like a small town in Iowa, and it's like, yeah, the doctor in the town like delivered him, his dad, his like all of his siblings. Like they've known the family forever. They
Yeah.
know all this background, and they do remember them because they saw them at the soccer game and at the town festival. And in a small town, you can kind of do that. But it's very hard in modern medicine to do that. And I think we are really trying to help improve that relationship that providers have with patients and augment their memory, right? You can't remember the details of 1,000 patients you see once a year. It's impossible.
Yeah. No, yeah. And it's like over time, I guess um what you guys are doing is like there's the personalization like along with time is like a U-shaped curve. It just goes drastically down as we modernize, and then with AI, it's probably going to go back up.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the other thing that we find is that we really don't know what works in medicine, especially in behavioral health, right? If you have heart disease, like there's a procedure, there's a protocol, everyone's been trained on it, it kind of works. If you're getting open heart surgery or something, if you go to behavioral health for this, and your presenting problem is like, well, I have this, this, and this, and I just don't feel well, and I think I might hear voices sometimes, and whatever. We don't really know what works. Even in substance use, it's like your chance of going to substance use treatment and getting well the first, getting sober the first time for the rest of your life is really poor. Um, and now we have medication-assisted therapies, but there's not really great data on what works for what types of people at this stage of their life with this history. But as we collect all this data, we'll really know like, oh, this person's a 35-year-old white male who's had a history of this amount of drug use. Here's his genetic profile. Here's the things that we know will work today with the highest probability. Won't be 100%, but today it's mostly just people like, you know what, I think this would work. I read a paper about that a while back. Like that's great. That's applying science, but it's not being able to look at all the data available about that person or that all of science knows.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the benefits of using AI is gonna just compound, looks like. Um what about what about what about that thing you said earlier about AI eventually being used as the person to talk to the patient or the next best alternative if a person isn't available? What would have to be the tipping point for you guys to implement that, or just in general for you, Loren, to think like,
Yeah.
okay, I think this is ethical, I think this is right?
Yeah. I think it starts with what I just said. I think you want to know, like, okay, what do we know about this person? What do we know about their condition? And do we know what works for that condition? And then you go, okay, do we have an AI that can deliver that? Right? If they need MAT treatment for substance use, AI over a computer is not going to deliver medication assisted therapy. So you need to send them to somewhere to get medication. But if talk therapy would work for this condition, for this person in this situation, let's have a chat, right? And I think
Hmm.
until we get to the point where we can prove that for a set of conditions, for a set of people, we can prove that AI can deliver the same outcomes, which we honestly don't even track outcomes very well in behavioral health. It's kind of like people leave the treatment and they're like, I feel a little better. I mean, and then they give them a survey, but it's not a very robust measurement. It's not done over time. It's usually not linked back to the whole course of treatment to say, okay, we did this, and this during treatment, and here were the outputs over this period of time. We just don't do that. So we need to build those data sets, and then we'll be able to say, can AI deliver the necessary intervention here to produce the outcome we want? We just don't, we've never had that data set before. And that's the data set we're building, right? Um, we will sit inside of the therapy session, listen to it. We'll produce notes for it, but we're also using, and then after therapy, we'll follow up and see how the patient's doing. Now we can link what happens in a therapy session to what actually happens to the patient in the real world. Then we can build AI that does the right things in there to produce the outcomes that work. So we're working towards that,
Yeah.
but I think we're taking a very conservative approach about how to do that, how to study that.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Okay. Um, what have you taken? I'm just personally wondering, like, what have you taken from your experience at HireVue into this new thing you're doing, or just like also what generally have you taken from like the past, the lore, the story of Loren,
Yeah.
and put it into Videra to make this really your own, and like part of how is it part of your life and mission
Yeah.
and all that?
Yeah, obviously the HireVue story, for those who don't know, was kind of a job interviewing platform. Let people interview asynchronously, just like we're checking with people now, but instead of telling their doctor how they're doing, they would interview for a job, answer job interview questions. And then ultimately we built AI that would listen to that interview and say, okay, you had 100 people interview. Here are the top 10 most likely best candidates. And, I think we learned a lot about engaging people in a video interaction. HireVue's done 100 million job interviews at this point with people. You learn a lot when you've done millions and millions and you survey people and say, what did you like? What did you not like to create a great experience? So I think that's been a really big piece of it. And then I think, you know, helping people get jobs is and measuring that is really hard. Like if you've interviewed people, you're like, and you've sat around a table going like, oh, I really like that candidate. Somebody else at the table is like, they were terrible. Who were you talking to? Were we talking about the same person? it's very subjective how we make these hiring decisions. And so it really taught us like how subjective this process is and how to measure and quantify things. Um, but I think the other part is just how do you make sure these models are fair? Because you don't want to discriminate against people. In many ways, the world of hiring, at least in the United States, is more regulated than healthcare. Like you literally can't make a decision that discriminates against a group of people, right? If you always pick the men for this or the white people for this, then you're discriminating. And so we had to test our models very, very um, rigorously to make sure that we weren't disadvantaging any group. And we learned that that's a lesson I really, really value, and we take to heart really carefully because we're trying to increase access for care, not reduce access to care. We're trying to help people who wouldn't normally get into care, make sure that they get into care. If we start disadvantaging groups, it's not helpful to anybody. And then I think the other thing is just really, it's been interesting to see the evolution of people and their perceptions of AI. People did not necessarily like the idea that they were being assessed by artificial intelligence for a job. And how do you build trust and how do you explain up front in a clear way, like, hey, here's what we're doing and here's why that's actually helpful to you. A lot of people say, well, I want to interview with a person. And it wasn't a choice for them between interviewing with a person and interviewing with a computer. It was interview with a computer or just don't get seen at all. Just go into just get put in the trash. Your resume just goes in the trash. And so it was creating opportunity for people. And how you communicate a message that was hard and still is hard. But as we think about why would you want to talk to an AI instead of talking to your doctor? How is this beneficial to you? What should you do with the results of that? All of those communication elements are pieces that I think we had to explore at HireVue and apply here as well.
Yeah, the messaging carries. It's a similar like messaging, like ethical justification in both companies.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think one thing that's funny in hiring is like I kind of made it like, well, you don't get to talk to the hiring manager, you have to do this AI thing first. In healthcare, generally you want to say, like, if you want to talk to the AI, we will find a person for you. Like you need to find a human alternative for people who just don't want to, don't trust, don't feel like it, don't want to deal with the AI. Like as much as possible, you want to find a human alternative for those people. So no one's left out.
Yeah. Have you had any crazy stories at HireVue or now of like people with like serious ethical backlash or like, Loren, you can't be doing this. I'm not gonna have my resume looked at by an AI. Ah, have you had any stories with that? Any
Yeah, we
friends
faced
like?
a lot of that early on at HireVue. And I think a lot of it was very well intentioned. Like, oh, I want to make sure AI, somebody would publish a thing, well, AI discriminates against people based on their skin tone, for example. And um, yeah, that can happen. Um, and the question, so it's very easy to say, oh, AI does this or AI does that, or AI can't do this, or AI. You generally have to sort of go, well, that AI can't, but maybe someone else, because as fast as this is changing, maybe somebody else built an AI that can do that today, right? And tomorrow, AI will be able to do that. Maybe not that other AI, but this AI. It's almost like you have to think of it as like, can that person do this, right?
Mm.
Does this person
Mm-hmm.
have this capability? And then there's probably things that are superhuman, like no AI has ever done this. And the reason I say that is like it was just very easy, like, well, this AI did discriminated, so your AI must also do it too. And so it's really important to kind of communicate clearly, like, no, no, we were actually testing for that. We're actually really thoughtful about that. We've thought that through. We've tested it. Um, and so we got a lot of backlash early on for sort of, um, you know, cut it, like preventing access and discriminating against people. And none of it was really accurate. And so the messaging is really, really important. And look, the truth of it is, even if we do it right, someone else might do it wrong, right? Not everyone's doing it right. And so I think there is this potential for AI to get a really bad reputation because of a few bad actors. Like we talked about the example of OpenAI as, encouraging someone to take their life. Does that mean all AI does that? Or is that just that version of OpenAI then? And so we have to kind of keep updating our model of what these things can do, and not assume that all AI is the same.
Yeah, yeah. And that kind of goes back into like the ultimate sci-fi version of Videra, assuming AI becomes perfect, you know, GPT-9 or, you know, just becomes
All
like a,
knowing.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
omnipotent, all knowing, um, and, capable of anything. What about agentic AI? That's like, I go on LinkedIn. That's always the word of the day for every company, person, agentic. What are you guys doing with like agentic AI that can go in and do things and change things?
Yeah, it's funny when yeah, again, now everybody does agentic AI, even though their products are the same as last year in a lot of ways, right? They just sort of, it's marketing's created a lot of innovation. Um, so, if you think about what Videra is doing, we were sort of given a task, which is, hey, go out and take this list of people and go find out how they're doing. Let us know, right? That's kind of the job of an agent. You give it a job, goes off and does it, and it brings back some result. And so, in a way, we've been doing that since the very beginning of Videra, right? And of course, it gets more adaptive about how it does it and how it handles exceptions and that sort of thing. So, I'm excited about the potential for AI to act with more agency and more freedom and be more creative, if you will, about how to accomplish a task. But I think a lot of it's overblown, honestly. I've seen a lot of really bad agentic systems that we've tested, and not outside of healthcare. I mean, just like how do you handle this customer support ticket or how do you handle this marketing task? So I'm excited about it. I think it'll really free up a lot of people to do things they haven't been able to do before. Um, but there's a lot of hype.
A lot of hype, a lot of hype. Yeah. Do you think? What do you think about all the bubble claims, all the bubble allegations?
Yeah, that's a long topic. I do think that I'm probably more on the side of this is going to change our world in so many ways that most people don't fully understand how much the world will change in the next 1 to 2 to 3 years. I think we're generally underestimating the amount of change that this will have on the world. So I don't know if the markets have properly valued that or not. I think in certain cases maybe they have. Um, but I think it's the biggest shift in our economy, in our world, in our culture, in our society. Um, it's bigger than the internet. It's bigger than the Industrial Revolution. Like this is really, really essentially creating other intelligences that go and act autonomously, and the risks are huge. Um, so I think we probably overall are underestimating it, but whether a particular, you know, company is overvalued is a harder thing to say, or group of companies that are all sort of, trading and exchanging dollars amongst each other. Yeah, there's going to be some winners and losers.
Yeah. So what's your like investors pitch then for Videra? Like the future of the markets and the industry, and then how Videra's gonna jump up with that.
Yeah, look, I think our view is that there should be a tricorder app for healthcare that uses visual, nonverbal, verbal behavior to check in with patients. That's probably a specialized app. There probably aren't 10 of them. There's probably a few winners there. We want to be that, and measure as much about a human as possible to get them the right care. And that it seems obvious to me that will exist in the world, and it's a huge opportunity to deliver better care. And that's Videra.
Okay. Okay. I was asking about like all the Tam, Sam, Sam, and all that.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
More simple than
yeah. I mean,
that.
we've
That's
got we've
probably
got
simple.
numbers to that, and there's behavioral health numbers, and there's broader healthcare numbers. I think easiest to say like, they're huge numbers, hundreds of billions of dollars of opportunity.
And then you guys are gonna go global.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would love to do that now. I think we're we've got plenty on our plate right now, but yeah, there's nothing about the way that what we're delivering that doesn't make sense across the entire world. I mean, the way you get paid for it in America is a little bit perverse, but and there's probably countries out there where we should go first. It would be easier, but we certainly decided to focus on the world that we know
Yeah,
for
cause
now.
cause I just think of like I used to watch these like documentaries about like mental illness in like other countries, like like in like Indonesia and stuff. Like you just get like beaten or something. Like it's like, oh, the devil's in you, or something like that. Like I think you
Yeah.
can probably really help out over there.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of everybody sort of sees the world differently based on their cultural lens. But objective data will probably help us all make better decisions.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, exactly. Doing, getting some science involved um, with it. Um, yeah. Like how are you getting people to trust your AI? What's your messaging for like you should trust this? Like how do you communicate that to someone? How do you communicate that to a non-technical person? Because I feel like if you start talking about your training and accuracy numbers and guardrails, like I feel like that won't communicate. Like how do you conceptually like talk about AI like to a layman, like trying to get them to trust it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. If you're talking to a provider, obviously they want to see data. If you want to talk to a healthcare system, they want to see ROI. If you're talking to just like the average person at a party and you're explaining what you do, I really feel like that's shifted dramatically over the last 4 or 5 years. When we were first building this, we were like, oh, that seems weird. That seems creepy. And I think COVID kind of made a lot of people feel more comfortable with being on camera. And then I think kind of the experience, if the experience is good, they'll have questions like, does it make stuff up? Does it hallucinate? Is it gonna tell me to do sort of bad things? I think you can kind of answer like, no, we put guardrails around that, and people are like, okay, great. Like I think for the most part, if people are comfortable with the idea of interacting with a phone and a video camera, and they've used ChatGPT, most people in the last few years have become much more willing to be like, oh, that sounds really cool. That sounds like it would be a good experience. They've had some kind of experience that's enough like this that they can kind of go, oh yeah, I think that'd be all right. I mean, then the question is like, who sees my data? Like, who gets to see this? Where do you keep it? How does my video about my mental health not show up on YouTube, right? And I think that's actually where we still have more concerns, not about kind of the AI experience, but just the regulation and the control of this data. Are you going to keep this forever? Or is this going to show up on, 50 years from now? And is this going to, if you're dealing with veterans, like, are you going to send this to the VA? Are you going to send this to my insurance company? There's definitely those questions about where data goes and who gets to see it, which in reality follows all the normal healthcare rules around HIPAA and who can see what. Um, and patients should be able to see their own data. It's not our data, it's their data. But there are good answers to that. But I think I think trust is more about uh, what gets recorded and what gets kept and who sees it than is the AI trustworthy today.
Hmm. Yeah, like yeah, if all these videos got out, that would be like, ugh. Ah. I feel
And
like
not
a lot of
everything recorded, to be clear. Like, some of our customers use this in a way they're like, look, I don't want that recorded. Just give me the data and then let's dump the recording kind of thing. So there's different ways to approach this based on the use case. But obviously, if we can record things and keep it over a period of time, we can learn a lot and provide more value to the patient.
yeah. Um is there even a practice, is there even like a way that anyone could like get that data if a hacker even wanted to? Is it like stored somewhere to train your guys' model and then it would like leak? How does that work? How do these leaks like work for something like video data?
Yeah, I mean, it's like any kind of data that's out there. You have to protect it carefully, do all, we have a robust information security process and, team that's super smart. Try to hack yourself, red team it, look for vulnerabilities constantly. Um, you have to take a very sort of adversarial approach. Um, it's kind of like when you're dealing with an LLM. This is a tangent, but I was preparing a talk recently. I said, "Give me the latest data on mental health statistics that I want to put into this talk," and came back with some numbers. And I said, I'm not really sure if those numbers seem right. Are those actually correct?" So you have to sort of proactively question it, and it goes, "You caught me lying. I'm sorry." And then it admitted that it made up a bunch of the numbers. And I said, can you tell me exactly which numbers you made up? And then it actually went back and said, yeah, this number was real. Here's the citation. This number was real. Here's the citation. This one I just made up out of thin air, right?
Huh.
And so I think you always have to play the adversary to this thing, whether it's your security or your LLM, and try to see where these things can be exploited.
Playing the adversary, yeah. What's that called? Like ethical hacking, or at least in cybersecurity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
You
absolutely.
guys you guys hire a bunch of ethical hackers.
Yep, yep. We have bug bounties, and people will report things. They don't. It hasn't happened very often, but I'm not, and that's not necessarily an invitation to everybody to go for it. But
Yeah.
yeah, we do. Just like anybody who's in this business, right? You have to be looking for these things and having both your internal and external people helping.
Yeah, I'm just thinking for like anyone listening out there, like in cybersecurity, you're trying to go into cybersecurity. It seems like AI, especially in healthcare, like AI is creating more of a demand for that. Would you agree? Because you're needing to store all this data.
Um, yeah, look, I think you see hacks against healthcare organizations all the time, trying to get at healthcare data, whether it's your electronic health record or something else, your labs, your images. It's a constant target.
Yeah, yeah, that's freaky. Yeah, and they're probably using it for like yeah, like if you have that data and like if someone misuses that, it sells it to like insurance. Yeah, that can be bad, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not. Yeah, I mean, any data that's stolen can be misappropriated. I mean, I think there's payment data is probably a lot easier to exploit.
Yeah.
Demographic data for sort of identity theft is probably valuable to exploit.
Mm.
Other sorts of data have less clear use cases. But if anybody steals your data about anything, like none of us like that, right? Um, we want our data to be our data. We want it to be kept secure and safe. Even if we can't anticipate how someone would misuse it, it's ours. Nobody else should have it.
Yeah. Well, with that, so there's a high, emphasis on privacy, on, the ethical use of AI, making sure that if it's not ready to talk to the patients, we have humans talking to the patient. You've got that experience from HireVue, making this Videra really really good at detecting things in people's videos. It looks like you got a great thing going on. So I'm really happy for you coming on, and I'm really happy that Videra is a thing. I'm really happy that this preventative tools getting out there. Too many people are going in these hospitals too late, right? So thanks for coming
Yeah.
on. Is there
Thanks,
anything
Marty. It
else
was a
you want to
really,
say?
really fun conversation. Went some fun places today.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to say before we wrap up?
No, I think hopefully people have gotten a sense of where AI can go and how it can help patients and providers have better relationships and see things earlier that are often missed and get people to the best quality of care.
Yeah. Well said. Until next time on the Digital Health Transformers podcast, I'm Marty. This was a great episode. See ya.